What was the exact moment you knew you had to flee? About 3 weeks ago, I was blackwater diving off the coast of Boynton Beach, Florida. For those who don't know, blackwater diving involves being left with a glowing ball to float over hundreds of feet of water in the Gulf Stream. At night, the glowing ball attracts all sorts of strange creatures that come up from the depths to feed, so it's a lot of fun for underwater photographers. That said, as a precaution, all divers must carry at least one light in their tank to be seen. I had accidentally grabbed my flashing blue light before jumping in. The captain mentioned that flashing blue lights were used by fishermen to attract big things at night. Since I'm a regular shark diver, there's not much that scares me down there, but something gave me a chill, and I changed my mind. Light for a normal green light. That same night, a legendary blackwater diver was on another boat a couple of miles north and was impaled squarely in the leg by a huge swordfish. The fish ripped the sword out of his leg and then continued hitting him with it, the way big squid hunt in the deep. The guy's leg was shattered and he had to self-rescue from about 30 meters deep. I don't know if he'll be able to walk, let alone dive again. Next story, if you're enjoying it, subscribe. This is a story that happened a few years ago while I was working at a landfill, and although it sounds like something out of a movie, it was as real as it was terrifying. I still can't forget it. My job was to operate heavy machinery, mainly excavators, to move and sort waste. It was on one of those days that I came across something that changed my life forever. I was working near the area where the trucks unloaded the waste and suddenly the excavator stopped. I saw something strange. It wasn't a common object, not something you would normally find at the dump. I decided to go closer and inspect it, thinking maybe it was a bag or something less strange. But it wasn't one of those large garbage bags like the ones used in homes. The only difference was that something was sticking out of the top of the bag. It wasn't clothes or anything that looked like a simple everyday object. At first, I thought maybe it was a dead animal or something similar, so I decided to open it carefully. What I found inside shocked me. It wasn't the body of a woman. She was completely naked, and the worst part was that she was tied. Her hands and feet were tied behind her back. The smell was unbearable. It was clear that she had been there for days, and well, don't know how to describe it. What I felt was as if my body had stopped working for a second. I was paralyzed. I completely remember my heart beating so fast that I almost drowned. At that moment, I knew I had to get out of there, but my body wasn't responding. I finally managed to react and ran away, calling the police while I was walking away. The only thing I could do was try to get away as quickly as possible. The scariest thing about all of this wasn't just what I found, but the fact that we never knew who that woman was. Bill, the colleague I was working with, was deeply traumatized. He talked about it for a couple of weeks afterward and told me he couldn't stop thinking about the scene. The worst thing is that day was so shocking that we both remained in shock for weeks. I personally haven't been able to stop thinking about her since that day. Next story, one day, I was home alone. My parents went on a trip for the weekend, so I was left in charge of the house. It had gotten dark, and I was watching TV when suddenly I heard a strange noise came from downstairs. I thought it was the house settling or something similar. But the noise repeated itself. This time it was louder. I decided to investigate and went down the stairs. But when I reached the end of the hallway, something stopped me. I saw that the front door was open. It didn't make sense because I had closed it before going to watch TV. I thought maybe I had forgotten to close it properly, but fear was already starting to grow. I closed the door, but the moment I did, I heard something moving inside the house. It wasn't my imagination. I knew someone was there. I felt a chill run down my spine and my heart started beating faster. I decided to go to the kitchen to grab a kitchen knife just in case. Although I had no idea what to do, if there really was an intruder, I heard footsteps. Someone was coming up the stairs. My mind started racing in all directions. At that moment, a clear, simple thought crossed my mind. I have to get out. From here I ran to the back door, opened it, and went outside. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran to a nearby neighbor's house. I told him what happened, and we called the police. When they returned to the house, they found no one. The doors weren't forced, and there seemed to be no signs that anyone had entered. However, the police told me that he had probably even heard the door closing and fled quickly. I know what I heard, and the feeling that someone was inside my house left me forever scarred. I have never been alone in that house again. The following story, when I was around 22, my friend and I were looking for her car in a half-empty parking lot. After a few moments, we noticed another pair of footsteps walking somewhere in the parking lot, but we still couldn't see them. Every time we stopped, the footsteps stopped too. Soon, we realized the footsteps were getting closer and starting to move faster, so we decided to go to the elevator to check another floor for her car. As we started walking faster, we heard the running footsteps and we turned around to see a hooded figure approaching us quickly. I looked at my friend and told her to run. We started running toward the elevator. We barely made it inside and began to press the button to close the doors before the dark, hooded figure reached the elevator and stuck his arm just inside, just a few inches of opening before the hooded person closed. He was a shadowy figure, and we couldn't see his face, even though he was so close to trapping us inside the elevator. It was very scary. We finally found his car. On another level, we saw a police officer and told him what happened. I'll never forget that feeling of running that came over me. Next story, when I was little, my little sister and I went camping in the woods near our house. We saw a bald man in a blue shirt and a dog walking. It wasn't uncommon to see people walking around the elevator area and we always greeted each other, but something made me feel uncomfortable, as if I had a pressure in my chest. My sister probably felt the same because we looked at each other worriedly. I don't know what made me do it, but even though I am not one for things like that, I took a picture of his back as he walked away for a while. Later, we saw the same man again. Near the lake, he approached us and asked us about the tent we were carrying, where we were going to set it up, and if we were camping with our dad. We told him yes, that we were going to see him now. It was a lie. We felt something strange was happening, so we decided to walk away along a path that divided until he couldn't see us anymore. Then we looked at each other, went down another path that was hidden in the bushes, and we waited. There, on the side, the man watched us leave. He pretended to be playing with his dog until he couldn't see us anymore, and then he started running down the path behind us. Fortunately, he didn't see us hiding. And he continued down the path he thought we had taken. We decided camping was no longer a good idea, so we headed back home. That afternoon, my mom showed us a post on the local residents group. It was a photo of the same bald man trying to break into someone's house. Apparently, he had been walking around the area, trying outdoors, and was posing as a repairman when he was stopped. I don't want to even imagine what he wanted to do, but we were very lucky to also know the forest because otherwise we wouldn't have thought of hiding on that hidden path. Next story, in 2019, my husband, my two daughters, ages 6 and 9, and I were on a road trip in the south. We had booked an apartment in Ireland through Airbnb, not knowing the neighborhood at all. It was bad, really suspicious, with lots of weird-looking people wandering around. We entered the apartment, and immediately, my 6-year-old daughter said, "I don't like being here." Here. The door didn't close properly, the beds were dirty, there was rotten food in the refrigerator, and the bathroom hadn't been cleaned in ages. My husband called the owner, who was furious and refused to give us a refund. To calm the situation, my husband offered not to leave a negative review if we only got our money back. The owner agreed, but asked us to wait for him to discuss the matter in person. As soon as he hung up, I told my husband we had to go now. We ran to the car, and when we pulled out of the parking lot, we saw the owner arriving with 4 friends. He didn't see us, and we rushed out. Next story, when my brother and I were kids, we were playing hide and seek in the front yard of our house. My brother was 3 years old and I was 6. My brother was supposed to count and find me, but it was taking too long. So I peeked around the side of the house to see what was going on. He had lost me interest in the game and was standing near the main door that faced the street. As I looked out, I saw a brown car pull up with 2 men inside. The car wasn't familiar to me, and neither were the men. They both got out of the car and approached my brother. They began asking him questions and getting closer to him. I remember feeling very worried. I had learned about stranger danger at school and knew this wasn't right. I ran around the house, jumped out the back door, and yelled, "Someone is trying to kidnap Steve." My dad didn't hesitate for a second. He got up and ran out the front door. When the men saw my dad leave, they quickly fled. From that day on, they didn't let us play in the front yard anymore. It's a very scary memory for me. The following story was about me. I was an infantry platoon leader in Afghanistan. One night we were on a foot patrol on the outskirts of a town where we were worried about Taliban activity. I decided to get closer to take a look around without worrying about the people. I was coming and going from the village, which is always stressful. It was around 3 in the morning, so everyone was asleep. Everything was completely silent. My interpreter was carrying an FM radio, which he used to monitor unsecured communications, which was how the Taliban used to communicate at that time. Then we heard something on his radio, and he calmly turned to me and said, "Sir, they're saying the ambush is ready." I immediately hopped on my radio and told my squad leaders to stop. We fell back and got out of there as quickly as possible. That was probably the most tense feeling I've ever experienced in combat. I'm convinced that Interpreter saved several lives that night. When he sent me a message during the fall of Kabul asking if I could get his family out, I called every contact I could think of to make sure he got on a flight. He lives in Sado, where he works in information technology. Next story, I was talking to my mom on the phone during my first week of college, and she suddenly said, "You can't run in flip-flops, so don't walk too far in them." I replied, "Okay, that's weird, Mom, or what?" That same afternoon, all my friends and I went for a walk, and they said they wanted to walk further. I looked at my flip-flops and had the feeling I needed to go back to my room, so I said goodbye. That day, they all got mugged and ended up in the hospital. Next story, a few years ago, a friend and I decided to go on a hike in the countryside, a sort of little nighttime adventure. We decided to go to a place that was near an old-growth forest that had always been a bit strange to me, but at the same time, I had never stopped visiting, despite the idea of being surrounded by nature being a bit unsettling. In the dark, we thought it was exciting. We arrived at the forest around 11 p.m., and although the place was fairly quiet, there was something strange in the air. I couldn't say what it was, but it felt heavy, as if something was watching us. We decided to move forward a little further, but after walking for a while, my friend stopped and told me he heard something. At that moment, I heard it too. It was a soft sound like footsteps, but we couldn't see anyone. We started walking faster, and at that moment, something or someone started following us. It wasn't just the sound of footsteps, but a real feeling that someone was stalking us. My friend and I looked back, but there was nothing. Even so, we felt that pressure on us, as if something was about to jump out of the shadows. As soon as we heard it, we started running again. We ran for what seemed like an eternity, but we couldn't find a way out. The shadows seemed to move around us. Every time we looked back, something vanished just before we could see it. Clearly, it was at that moment that panic began to take over. We finally reached a small clearing, and that's when we decided we should immediately leave the woods without saying a word. We headed back toward the path without looking back. We reached the main road and never looked back. We never spoke about that night. We simply didn't want to go back to that feeling of terror. The fact that we didn't know what had happened that night left us scarred. We don't even know if it was real or our imagination, but the feeling of being followed never went away. We never went near that woods again.